Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, divorce support for dads, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I'm your host. I created this podcast and the Divorced Advocate community as a result of my own high conflict divorce, and because you as a dad deserve all the resources necessary to thrive through this challenging time. I encourage you to check out our website at thedivorcedadvocate.com, where there are resources that correspond to this episode, as well as free access to our membership community, where you will find live meetings, free workshops and courses, private discussion groups, and more. And now, on to this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate, where we help dads create a healthy and less traumatic divorce. My name is Jude Sandoval, and I am your host. Thanks for tuning in today. And for those of you that celebrate the Christmas holiday, happy Christmas week. This is the week coming up here where we'll be celebrating here, at least in the States where I'm at, Christmas Day, and with that sometimes comes quite a bit of stress, particularly around friends and families gathering all together. I think you probably know what I'm talking about, but that can even be a little bit more challenging when we're going through this transition and change during divorce. And so what I wanted to talk about today is how to set boundaries with friends and family. Now, this one can be stressful in and of itself, but it is absolutely a critical thing for us, and in particular in taking care of ourselves and doing some of that self-care. And so we're going to chat about that a little bit today. Before we get into it, let me just give you some show notes. Again, the divorce quiz. Man, we're just getting a ton of people. It must be the holiday season. Going through the quiz, kind of seeing where they're at in their divorce compared to others who have gone through it. Takes about 5 or 10 minutes, and it will give you some immediate results, and you can review those. And if you want, you can schedule a time for me to sit down with you at no cost and no obligation to go through the results of that and talk about what you've got going on with your divorce. So check that out at thedivorcequiz.com, or you can find it also on the divorcedadvocate.com website under the tab Divorce Quiz. So check that out. And the other one is I've been teasing, and I've been being teased because our app is almost ready. As far as I know, it's submitted for approval with Google and with Apple. And so I was hoping that was going to happen this week, but maybe it's going to be a Christmas present to me coming up later this week or next year, or I mean next week. But maybe it's going to be a New Year's present. I don't know. I don't know how these things work, but we're getting close. That's the long and short of it. So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be a phenomenal resource. It's going to house everything that we've got, our videos and our podcast and the articles and blog posts, as well as our workshops and membership site and everything. So it's going to be a great resource for any of those that that are listening. You'll be able to download that, find this podcast, as well as all kinds of information that will correlate to the podcast. We'll be cross-linking all that stuff and giving you more resources and more opportunity to find some help and connect with other dads as well. So check that out, or be on the lookout for that. And maybe Santa will bring that to me this week. All right. So setting boundaries with friends and families. If you were or are anything like me, setting boundaries was a challenging thing to learn. And the holidays can be a beautiful time of the year, but they can also be stressful, especially when the boundaries are being overstepped by friends and family members. And I think you know what I'm talking about. It's that parent maybe that's pushing the envelope, or or one of the overbearing, controlling family members that wants to exert themselves during the holidays. But the stress is commonplace during the holidays in general because we just have to do so much. So add to that these family issues, and it can turn into the perfect storm. But you can preserve the joy. Trust me, you can preserve the joy of the season and manage the stress by implementing sound boundaries. Okay, sound boundaries with that parents or that family member, or even your children, right? Because our children are testing us, which they should be doing often, but setting boundaries with them as well is healthy, and it also teaches them how to set boundaries as well. So setting the boundaries thing is a real big thing with me, especially somebody like myself who's been codependent in the past and had to work through some of those issues. And setting the boundaries is really a big thing. And while it may seem challenging or intimidating to do, it's possible, and it's definitely worth the investment of energy and time. And let me just say that last part again, it's worth the investment of energy and time. And I repeat that because it does take energy and it does take time to do this. So it's we may be, or you may be, or like I was, in patterns of how to act around this and how to let boundaries get crossed. And that is very easy to fall into. That's a pattern that's very easy to fall into. And then you get comfortable with that. So then it becomes difficult and uncomfortable to undo that. And it takes effort, and it takes the time to recognize it, to think about it, and then to make sure that you're implementing those boundaries, stating those, and then making sure that there's consequences, which we'll talk about coming up here, if those do get crossed. So the first thing to do in setting boundaries is really first understanding your needs. It's important to understand exactly what you need so that you are able to effectively communicate that to others. Now, this requires some self-reflection, some self-analysis to help you identify behaviors and other things that are causing you discomfort, distress, worry, whatever that might be. But once you understand that what your preferences are and what your limits are, then you're in a better position to establish what those boundaries are and then advocate for what you need from those family members or anybody that's in and around you. And these don't just apply to family and friends during the holidays. This can apply, like I said, to your kids. I guess that would be family too, right? But to kids, this could be in your workplace as well with employers. So I found once I discovered that I was not doing this well, that it was pervasive in all of my life, not only personally, but professionally as well. So while we're talking about this in the context of the challenges around the holidays and having family and friends over or interacting with them, that this can apply to all places. And typically you're going to find if you're not setting boundaries in one part of your life, it's probably not happening in the other parts of your life either. So the next part of this then is to prioritize yourself. This was a big challenge for me. This all was a big challenge. Obviously, you're going to keep hearing me say that on all these different sections. But before you can adequately establish and advocate for what you need, you have to know that you're worthy of establishing boundaries and having those boundaries respected. So those are two different things. So one is that you're worthy of having boundaries. So that means that you're allowed to have needs. You're allowed to need to have something. So once you've determined what those are, what the things that may make you uncomfortable, that you're allowed to convey those things. And then the second part of that is that those need to be respected, that you deserve to have those respected. And if people can't respect those, then there might need to be a change or some sort of consequence, which we're going to talk about here. So, often we allow mistreatment and abuse in part because of an underlying belief that we're not worthy of that kind of treatment and not deserving of something better. But here's the thing: is when you know your worth, you're better able to stand your ground. You'll stand your ground. You'll communicate your boundaries and hold firm to them in the face of opposition, because you know that you are worthy and worth having those needs and being able to prioritize yourself. So take the time to do what you need to do to ensure that you are feeling like you are worthy. So that might be meditations, those might be affirmations, that might be talking to a therapist, talking to a coach, talking to a friend that's going to reinforce some of those things in your mind. Now, we're going to get into the communication part of conveying these boundaries. And the biggest key, I feel, in doing this is using I statements. So I statements versus you statements. When we communicate, it's important not to make the communication of our boundaries seem like an attack on the other person. So you statements tend to make other people angry and defensive. So when we say something like, you always do this, or you are acting like this, or you are mean or angry, then it's an attack on somebody else. Instead, using I statements helps us to put that, it should never be about the other person, what they do or what they don't do. So when we emphasize, when we make the emphasis on us and what our feelings are and being accountable for ourselves, it helps the other person's potentially, hopefully, to see what we're talking about or hear what we're talking about so that they can respect our wishes. So instead of saying something like, you're so mean or you're being mean, it could be something to the effect of, I feel really sad, or I feel really worried when you talk like that to me, or when you raise your voice to me. Always use the action, right? Specify the action of what they're doing specifically so that there's no questions about what they're doing, but put it in the terms of I feel. And I feel is a great statement. If you can learn I feel statements a lot, they're beautiful because nobody can argue with how you feel. I'll say that again. Nobody can argue with how you feel because your feelings are your own and they're unique to you in that moment. So when you're conveying, I feel that, or I am feeling, then nobody can argue that. So in this circumstance, instead of saying something like, you are being mean to me, you could say something, I feel threatened, or I feel worried because you, see, I did it. It's hard to get out of. I'm feeling worried when you raise your voice. Okay, so then that's just, they can't argue with that. You're worried, and then they can potentially, hopefully, see that worries you when they raise their voice, and they'll stop raising their voice. Now, again, this isn't a guarantee that anybody's going to listen, right? Because we just can't make them. We can only convey what we want to convey in the most effective manner as possible. So use the I statements instead of the you statements. And then the next part is be abundantly clear about what you're saying. Leave no room for confusion, no ambiguity when communicating. Somebody else cannot properly respect your boundaries if they're not really sure what you're needing and what you're wanting. So so be clear, be concise, and when you set and communicate the boundaries, this will enhance their understanding and elevate the ability of others to give you what you want. So in that I statement, that example I was using before, when you say, I feel worried when you raise your voice, I need you to please lower your voice. That is setting a clear boundary. You're being very clear about your I statements. You're being very clear about your feeling. You're being very clear then about what they're doing, and you're being very clear about what it is that you're asking them to do or what your needs are. So that's very, very critical. Be very, very clear. Now, I again suggest, and you've heard me talk about it on the program before, the nonviolent communication, NVC. It is a phenomenal framework in which to communicate with people. And it's just a 4-step process, very similar to what we're talking about here. It goes into a little more detail on how to do that. This is just kind of a topical thing. And this is something that I teach in private coaching sessions a lot with men, in being able to communicate with their ex or soon to be ex or their children in an effective manner. The nonviolent communication is unbelievable. It's probably one of the most life-changing things that I have ever experienced in being able to communicate effectively with other people, because it takes out all the guesswork. It takes out all of the emotion about it. It takes away all of that back and forth and going down rabbit holes of arguments that are non-productive. It is simply a 4-step process to very productive communication. And I'll put in the show notes the link to NVC, but you can also Google it, nonviolent communication. It's
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, this is Jude with a quick reminder about the Divorced Advocate Foundation for Fathers, which is our nonprofit that helps dads through divorce with legal education, free or reduced cost coaching, and mental health resources. If you own a business or know someone who does, there's an easy way to help by connecting credit card processing through our partner program. Part of the fees go straight to the foundation with no added cost to the business, and 98% of businesses are actually able to save money on their processing fees. It's a win-win. So if you know a business that accepts credit cards, get them in touch with me by sending a warm introduction email to jude@thedivorcedadvocate.com, or give me a call directly at 720-255-1021.
What is, I'm trying to remember his name. Marshall Rosenberg. There it is. Marshall Rosenberg is the author. So check out that book. You can also go online and find a lot of articles and PDFs around it. The next part is saying no. Wow. Sometimes that is uncomfortable, right? It's okay to say no as a means of protecting and prioritizing yourself. The more comfortable you get saying no, the less you will take on responsibilities and tolerate behavior that does not serve you. Your no does not have to come with explanations or support. It can simply be a no and move on. Ask my kids this. I've gotten good at this, and it's a really, really good tool. It is okay to say no, and it's okay for people to hear you say no. It is simply setting a boundary. You don't have to explain yourself. It can just be no. It's an important word, and it's a good one to learn and to incorporate into your vocabulary. All right, the last one now that I referenced several times before is establishing the consequences. Now, this is where the rubber meets the road, because this becomes the most challenging part. And there's the two parts, like I said. The first part is stating what your needs are, and we just talked about that. The next part is setting consequences and holding true to what those boundaries are. And then, so this is where you will be teaching people whether or not you are being true to what your needs are, or if they can continue to cross over your boundaries and do whatever they want. So this is critical. It's also critical to be able to state them, but it's critical then to be able to hold true to those consequences. So there's going to come a time when people or somebody is going to challenge your boundaries. Now that might be intentionally, or it might be unintentionally, right? But when this happens, there needs to be an established consequence so people understand that a failure to respect your boundaries comes with some sort of punishment or some sort of action. I don't want to say punishment, but some sort of action on your part. Now, this is going to deter them and discourage them from future oversteps and help you establish yourself as a serious individual whose needs should be respected. Again, because you are worthy of having those needs. Now, here's the thing. If you don't set consequences and you let your boundaries be crossed, then you're just teaching that person or people that they can do this. So this can backfire. If you're stating a need and then you're not holding true to what that need is and letting them cross the boundary, then what you're doing is you're training them to cross boundaries continually. Now, if you're like me, you probably may already be in that situation. So this is going to be a whole new ball game in trying to learn how to effectively communicate them and then make sure that there are consequences when they cross those. Now, consequences can be small, consequences can be big, and sometimes it means walking away from a friendship or potentially a relationship or something else or a job or whatever it might be if you're not comfortable with the overstepping of boundaries. So this is something that when you're going through this process, make sure that you're taking the time to really, and this goes back to what I was talking about with the taking the time and the energy to do this. It takes some forethought. It takes that forethought of what we talked about in the beginning, and I'll go through these again. Understanding what your needs are. Understand so that you know that you can go through this process and you're going to feel comfortable when you come to the end and somebody's trying to cross those boundaries, that you're going to be able to stay true to those consequences. So if you don't do step one and really take that time and effort to go through and pay attention to understanding your needs and then prioritizing yourself and being truly understanding that you are worthy of having those needs, then it's going to be hard on that back end. So, and then going through and using the I statements, being very clear about what it is that you're stating, incorporating no, if you must, into your vocabulary, and then establishing the consequences around what's going to happen if somebody or many people cross over those boundaries and are not respectful of what you've asked for and what you clearly stated as what your needs were. So I hope this helps as we all start to gather around and celebrate the holidays. For me, it's a joyous time. I know that it can be a very stressful and challenging time while you're going through this. Setting these boundaries, also with the kiddos. We didn't talk about any of those examples. I do talk about that a lot in private sessions and in doing this because, as I mentioned earlier, it's a great opportunity to teach them to do this, because the worst thing is to have children modeling your behavior and then they start letting people cross their boundaries, and you see that, but it may have been, and I know this is part of my life and what I've witnessed is if I'm not modeling something in an appropriate way, then it seems like, and oftentimes is the case, that the kids see that and then they start behaving in that manner. So it's also critical, set these boundaries so that you're teaching them to set boundaries too, because you definitely want them to have boundaries also as they start mitigating their relationships and their friendships and everything else. So it's a lot to think about. I recognize that. Do your best. If you have questions, please always reach out. Get involved in one of our group meetings and talk with some of the other men. We talk about this quite a bit, especially in working through the process of co-parenting and establishing some new routines and schedules. So there's a lot of conversation around these in that context in our group meeting. So get involved in the group meeting, log in, and if you found some value that was that you benefited from this, please like our page. Take some time to leave a comment or share this on social media with somebody as well. It helps us immensely. We're spreading the word. We're getting more people listening to the show every single week. It has been now for the year and a half. And we're spreading the word, and that's just going to continue to happen more and more. So I'm wishing you a very, very Merry Christmas if you're celebrating that holiday this week. If you're not, have a phenomenal week. And God bless. I'll talk to you next week. To hear the rest of this episode and access the corresponding resources, visit thedivorcedadvocate.com and become a member of our community. It's free to join and will provide you with the resources you deserve as a divorced or divorcing dad. Thank you for listening. God bless, and I'll talk with you next week.